And now I have the great pleasure of inviting Michael Saine to the stage with his speech, Sith by Necessity. Michael Saine, Sith by Necessity.
Thank you so much, Lana. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Doctor, fellow speakers. I'd like to personally thank you all for coming to the Green Inner Greatness Global Conference 2023. Without the support of the people watching and without the audience, we couldn't do as much as we have, or we couldn't share as much as we are sharing about where we all are in our personal journey. But I'd like to start my speech with someone else's personal journey, a story, if you will, I read when I was merely 8 or 9. Michael Jordan was woken up at 3 a.m. Knock, 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 knock on the door. Some reporter was waking Michael Jordan up out of the bed. At this time, all he was a journeyman rookie who was an explosive talent. But already Jordan knew something that we didn't know. Michael Jordan showed up in a three-piece suit at 3 a.m. in the morning when they knocked at the door. I'm sure you guys can all know that it wouldn't work out for you if you knocked at my door at 3 a.m. But he did, because he understood what personal branding is. To continue on discussing that, and to continue discussing Michael Jordan specifically, when we think of the idea of be like Mike, just do it, and all these other things, this young man who was once getting the door knocked on by reporters transcended basketball and made millions through personal branding. Corporate companies manage lots of money, millions and billions of dollars per year on the concept of their branding. So why can't you have a brand? Why can't I have a brand? There's no reason that I shouldn't be. A mere 7 years ago, I was a carpenter with the Navy. I was down in a dirt hole covered in mud. And I decided I wanted something different. So I threw down my hammer. I looked at them all. I was like, I had enough of you people. I'm going out to be a hacker. I want to be a professional hacker. And they laughed. They're like, no way can you do that. Immediately, I used my GI Bill. I came in and I took a bunch of classes and I worked on it because I needed first to establish the baseline. Remember, there was no be like Mike if Mike wasn't scoring 30 points a night. And I thought a lot about that as I moved forward in college. Every second, I was so blessed to have the book's author as one of my instructors at my college. I was introduced conceptually idea, and I just tucked it in the back of my head at that point. And then I thought a lot about that. As I grew, I got a master's of cybersecurity technology with an emphasis in penetration testing, which really just means I have a bunch of certificates behind me and I'm some sort of super technical person, but that's not a brand, is it? There are millions of people getting degrees in cybersecurity every day. What separates me and what makes me different? And how can I tell an employer in 5 minutes or less what makes me different and special? So I sat down like Winnie the Pooh. Think, Pooh Bear, think, think, think. And I thought back. As a child, it had been a happy habit to run around hacking and working on things. I was one of those children that got in a lot of trouble, a Bart Simpson, if you will. But I already had a background, and it was something that I already had spent my entire life working with. The certificates, the degrees weren't just something that I went to a class and learned. I actually knew what I was doing. So how do I communicate this? And I thought, well, it's quite simple. I'm a bad boy. Why not be the bad boy? And if you've ever watched Star Wars, which most nerds know, most people know when we're discussing cybersecurity immediately about Star Wars, the Sith are a race of people. They are a group that dedicate themselves to dark side arts. I'm like, oh, almost like what I'm trying to do. I'm ethical, but at the end of the day, I'm still really the bad guy deep down underneath. So I started. I had a piece. Obviously, when you're advertising yourself to a company, you can't move forward and just say, I'm a bad guy, hire me. Nobody wants that. It was a year after I graduated college that I was listening to Keen Lear, and I heard the term villain by necessity, a reference to the idea that sometimes rough men must make decisions in order to keep others safe. Oh my God, I have it. My brand, Sith by necessity. I bring to you a product that I've learned by growing through the dark side and doing dark side acts in order to keep you safe. So I began establishing a brand around that. I began building a newsletter around that. I'm actually working on a book around that. When I introduce myself, I'm able to say in 30 seconds why you should invest in me. And I made that the center of my personal brand. A Star Wars joke is the center of my personal brand. But in those 3 words, just like Mike, in those 3 words, I was able to communicate something, a greater conceptual idea that brings interest to people. Today, it's kind of funny because at this time, I'm not working as an ethical hacker. At this time, I'm a social media manager. It turned out that the ideas that I learned from the book were so persuasive that other people actually hire me to handle their branding too now. The same skills I use as a hacker, I use as a social media manager in order to look at the algorithm, move through the different things, and do everything that I need to promote that page and put it in a place where it's number 1. So at this point, not only did I prove that I was the ethical penetration tester that I wanted to when I started, I've actually taken that brand and moved forward past that ethical penetration tester to have other people flock to me to design their brands. And that is what happens when you bring out inner greatness. That is what happens when you take a brand. That is what happens when you put that brand out there. And that is what happens when you attract people and opportunities to you. So I'm going to ask you this. What's your personal brand? What words sum you up? What makes people understand who you are and what you have to offer the table